Like so many great accomplishments in human history, the origins of biochemistry are rooted in the production of alcohol and alcoholic beverages. How many people here have read the book, A History of the World in 6 Glasses? Oh my God, you guys got to read this during spring break. History of the World in 6 glasses. Because 2 of those 6 glasses, maybe it's 3, are alcohol. Alcohol has been a dominant force in human evolution and science and technology since the dawn of time. And our knowledge of alcoholic beverages dates back at least 3,000 years or more. Okay? And all of our understanding of alcohol and alcoholic beverages are really based on one specific reaction, and that's this reaction. It's the reaction of C6H12O6, or glucose, into 2 molecules of ethanol and 2 molecules of CO2. Now, these proportions of ethanol and CO2 to glucose were actually worked out, believe it or not, by Lavoisier. And the process that converts glucose into ethanol and CO2 is catalyzed, of course, by yeast. This is something that the Greeks knew about. And the Greeks had a special word for yeast. They called yeast zyme, Z-Y-M-E. And the Greeks knew that zyme was required in order to produce gas in bread, and it was required to turn grapes into wine. And the role of yeast in catalyzing this reaction was further elaborated by Louis Pasteur in the 1850s, who showed that you could only get this process to go, at least under the conditions that he explored, if yeast were present. And this led to 2 schools of thought about the process by which glucose could be converted into alcohol. And those 2 schools of thought, one of them was called vitalism, and one of them was called mechanism. Anybody heard of vitalism before? So vitalism is good. So vitalism was this idea that fermentation was the result of some kind of magical life force, something that was present in living cells that was governed by entirely different laws than the laws that apply to inanimate matter, right? That this was somehow self-determining or something special, right? This was the life force. And mechanism, of course, was exactly the opposite. Mechanism simply said that natural phenomena are based on the same fundamental laws, right, of chemistry and physics that everything else applies to. And the question was the process by which glucose was converted into ethanol and CO2 some magic life process, or was it just the same old chemistry and physics that we all knew about? Now, Pasteur was determined to solve this problem, and so he took yeast and he took glass and he ground up the yeast and he made a cell-free extract of yeast. And he found that cell-free extract was completely unable to catalyze the conversion of glucose into ethanol. Clearly, vitalism must be right? There has to be some magical life force. Now, we all laugh at this. We snicker at this, and we think, ha. But I can tell you, there's plenty of stuff in the lay literature that talks about vitalism. They may not call it vitalism, and they may not write it this way, but they use all kinds of other explanations that claim that there's something magical about life that we can't somehow explain with physics and chemistry. Now, the change came, the real breakthrough here came in 1897. The change came in 1897 by a German chemist whose name was Eduard Buchner. Not the same Buchner as the Buchner funnel, but the name is the same. And what he did was he took yeast and he mixed them together with quartz and kieselguhr, which is really diatomaceous earth. And in this, he used a solution that had 40% sucrose, and he, in fact, was able to make a cell-free extract, something that had no yeast in it. And that cell-free extract was able to convert glucose was able to convert glucose into ethanol. Okay? And this was really a landmark finding. And what Buchner said was that there was something in the yeast that could do this, and he called that magic property, he called them ferments of zyme. Something in zyme, in yeast, that was able to ferment glucose into CO2. And we now know what this stuff is, right? That these days our modern term for this is an enzyme. But that's where the term enzyme comes from. Okay? But this actually was the birth of biochemistry in 1897, and that really opened the door to the scientific study of reactions in living matter.